So good evening, Vivienne Dixon. How are you?
Hello, hello. You'll see I'm standing up in my space because I actually don't have a chair in my space. It's not really big enough. And I like to be working when I'm in my space, which means you have to stand up to make prints. It's very difficult to turn a wheel on a press and ink up if you're sitting down, or I can't do that. So when I have my coffee break switch off time, I go in the garden.
So you have the two studio scenario that many people have, which is the indoor outdoor spaces.
Yes, and the other end of this space, my husband works, so he's disappeared now, so it's quiet.
And does he have a chair?
No, neither of us have a chair.
Neither.
So he is seeing people all the time, and they have to stand up too because there's not enough space in his workshop for them to sit down. But that's probably just as well.
Don't want people malingering, do we? Keep them moving through. So Vivienne, just introduce yourself for people who don't know you. Just give us a brief bit of background about you, your practice, where you are in the phase of your journey.
Okay, well, I'm a printmaker, but can I start again? I'm not doing this very well. I've been making art of all different sorts for many, many years. And I suddenly decided in my later life that I would like to prove to myself that I actually could do the same thing as the young ones and go and do a degree. So mad as it was, and struggling with the lockdowns and the heat, I made it. So I started off, I was able to do my BA in 2 years at City and Guilds in London because I'd done so much art before. Mm-hmm. And I had to start at year 2 because that's when they start to give you marks. Then in my madness, I decided I'd stay on and carry straight on into the MA. By this time, the school had pushed me towards making 3-dimensional work because they said that I worked and thought in 3 dimensions, probably partly because my original training was at ballet school. I went to ballet school for 3 years at 16 and then taught ballet for a number of years to children and adults, which was great fun. But as the years go round, you do start to creak a bit. So I decided I was already making art and making textiles, coming from the north of England, and my family come from the Western Isles. You do tend to do more hands-on things, or in my growing up, we all did hands-on things rather than being mega academic. And so a lot of my work does relate around the sea, although it's become very abstract. So it's not necessarily obvious that that's where it's come from. Coming from a family of fishermen, I guess it's just what's in my genes. And I find if I'm on the coast, wherever it is, I have to go to the beach. I don't want to be in the water, but I need to be there. And I just have this weird hang up that my DNA takes me to the beach, to the coast. That's where my body feels comfortable and start to relax and feel like my heart beats in time with the water coming in and out, which most people probably think, oh, this is time to switch off, she's lost it. But that's just how it feels. Or even if I'm next to the Thames, which I've been in London doing my work for such a long time now, the tidal parts of the Thames I have the same feeling. And when you just feel the water lap against things and you think, oh, it makes me jump sometimes. But
so have you finished your MA now?
Yes, I finished my MA now, and I did print predominantly, and print is where my heart lies. Hence I have a press in my space at home. But I also did do glass, bronze, collage. I actually made my version of a standing stone, like they'd have standing stones in the island my family come from. That was, I cast the floor in the workshop space. So it's all it's it's about 3 foot high, but that was my tribute to me for the length of the 4 years I spent at City and Guilds. That's felt like I lived there for 4 years. And
so the studio that you had there, was that your own studio space, or did you share it?
A bit of each. Mostly they're pretty good with studio spaces. You do get quite a lot of studio space, but I spent a lot of time in the print room, and there would be 5 of us in the print room. Partly it was restricted to that amount because of lockdown and COVID, but we still were able to go in during a lot of the lockdown and COVID things, because there was a little clause. A lot of art schools didn't, but there's a clause in it. If your degree is predominantly making, when the schools went back for the children, we were allowed to go back. But it was very strict. We wore a mask all the time. So when people said, "Oh, what are you looking forward to having to put your mask back on again?" I said, "Well, actually, I haven't taken it off because I've been travelling in and out, and we had to keep it on all day as well, except when you were eating." So you just thought it felt like it became part of you, really. And so it's just interesting to see what happens. And my work's gone really, really abstract. And I've been thinking, because I didn't do anything when I stopped, because I only finished in September, just gone. And then in October, my daughter-in-law had her first baby, so I became a grandma. So I have taken a bit of time out to play with him, and he's just 8 weeks old this week. So I had to enjoy the tiny bits. And I've been thinking, because I've been looking through my work and thinking, I think I need to pull this back to be a bit more semi-abstract. That's what my brain is saying to me. Come on, you've gone this way for a long time, and it just feels like it's time to pull back again. Because when I first started doing any sort of art, I went to life classes and did portraits. I really liked doing charcoal portraits, and I'm not saying that that's where I want to be, but I'd quite like to. I do a lot of big charcoal drawings, and they do become abstract, but they're always taken from something real. It's just my way of things. But I think that these have got really abstract.
People do tend to think that abstract is quite easy, but actually I think abstract is really difficult to do successfully. And as you've said, you know, a lot of your practice is based around your family and your heritage and everything. As you're growing your family with the new baby, do you think that will start to crop up as well in your work?
I don't know. I think it's too soon. What I do like to do, because my work has gone so abstract, and you find when people come to look at your work, they can't get their heads around it always. And so they stick their head in the studio space and they go, "Oh, I'm frightened of that." And they either come in and talk to you about it, or they run. I started to make small three-dimensional objects. In my BA, I did a burger, and I'll just put a burger somewhere, and then people go, "Oh, there's a burger." So then they tend to stay a bit longer because they're looking to see what else, a bit like being a child, to see what else they can relate to. And this time I did takeaway coffee cups, because I think they will become an iconic item, because we had them all everywhere before the lockdown and COVID, and we'd started to use our own cups. Then when COVID opened up, we weren't allowed our own cups for a while, and now they're beginning to disappear again. So I think they'll disappear eventually, but I only had time to make a couple, and so I haven't really shown them yet, but everybody that saw them just came in and laughed and smiled, because it's something that you see every day, and it really seemed to attract them towards them. And they were made in bronze, so that was the unexpected bit, the different material.
Yeah.
So then I feel I can put, and they were stood next to my standing stone that was all white against a black background. So I like to play with maybe painting a wall a different colour. And as you can see, there's loads of colour on the wall, but I always started off really doing black and white, and black partly because of doing charcoal. And if I did it a charcoal of a head, say, and somebody had a ponytail with a ribbon, I'd just draw a little thin red line just to be a highlight somewhere. And I suppose that's what it is. I like to do, to highlight really tiny things, which sometimes that means it becomes so abstract that you don't really get what it is. Like these are walls in a warehouse that's falling down, and I'm not sure that you necessarily get that that's what they are, but then I don't mind if I like the image. Some of them I've got too dark, and the new thing I started to do is stick found objects on them, because I found when I was walking to from Waterloo up to the school, there was so much stuff on the ground and I couldn't resist picking it up. And so I thought, I have to try. And I noticed that screen printers seem to put bits on their prints now. And that's much easier because it's a big flat area, and I'm sure they must add them afterwards, like I've added mine afterwards. But I just thought, oh, well, let's try. And as you can imagine, the etching tutor, who's terribly traditional, just looked as much as say, what planet have you come from to be putting these things on your etchings? It should just be the etching. That's what people want to see. But then I'm a bit rebellious, you know, that's my personality. I thought, well, we can try.
So can you give us a view round, because these works on this wall here are amazing. Can you give us a view round the studio so we can see what else is on the walls?
Well, just these walls, otherwise those are glazed.
Okay.
This first one that I think you can only see half of it, which is a large one on it. They're all on steel plates, which were really heavy to use. And most of them have 2 plates. So this big one, you could only make, let's say, 2 in a day. It was really heavy going. But I did sell one of these to, they haven't let me know yet. There's a new hotel, to a new hotel somewhere in London, and these were going in the dining room.
Beautiful.
And they were going to send me an invite for when they open, so I could go and see it hanging. Then they're all from the same place. These I made small ones and slightly bigger ones, thinking I'd print them all in a similar way to make them into triptychs, but me being me, that really didn't happen. I get carried away and excited by something when I start to print. So these were all made on this wall using varnish to make the marks. It was the mark making I really enjoyed doing. And I put, you know, using photographs I'd taken in situ, and I tried to do some rubbings there, but too much started falling off the walls, so I thought I'd better stop this, and they weren't really very successful. So I like to try things in different colours, even though every time the tutor would go, Vivienne, how can you possibly use that colour? Well, I just do. And I use a lot of stencils to mask areas in thin card, and because, as I say, it's got 2 layers, then it's fun to take them off, and they tend to be like more like monotypes, although they're prints, because you can guarantee they never absolutely drop in the same place each time. And I think the bits of white brings it to life. Then this is using 2 sheets of paper to print at the same time, having cut a big triangle out of the top piece. So when you put the whole plate on, you only get the area where the triangle's been cut out.
Yes.
And then this is another one where the triangle had been cut out, and the print with the triangle on, I turned round and stuck on, so it gave me the white bits with the same principle as this,
Yes.
with the found object. I'm not sure about that colour. It reminds me a bit of what might be Grandma's curtains, but it was really the idea that I was looking at. So
you're still experimenting.
Yes, I mean, I'm always experimenting, whether it's drawing or printing. I don't do a huge amount of painting. City and Guilds didn't really like my painting because they saw me as 3D. But then when I had finished, I thought, actually, you didn't really see my more experimental paintings, which I don't know if they would have liked them or not, but that's their loss. And this one's just got 2 squares that I put in the middle, dropped on, and then I use the same squares to stick them back on and just allow a bit of the white to show through, which I quite like that as well. And then these were the bits, and these are other bits I'm thinking about using that, can you see those?
Yes, yeah, we can, yeah. They're like little diamond shapes and
yes, and so
triangles.
I'm going to make a collection of these and then do something with them that I think will be quite nice, that will look more like collages. But I quite like the fact that you've got all the parts if you don't put them all back in here.
Yeah, you're kind of collecting. It's a very surrealist approach to printmaking. The gap, the window.
Well, I think I've gradually started to use stencils more and more, and this one had masking tape put on to make these lines, and I specifically cut, you know, the normal masking tape. I stuck it onto a board and I cut with a knife so that I got the wobbly edges, and then stuck it on, and that gradually disappears because each time you take it out of the acid and you dry the plate to do the next bit, a bit will lift on the edge and things seep underneath, and I suppose it's the process that excites.
The jeopardy.
Yes.
We love the jeopardy.
Well,
which artists then are you heavily influenced by, do you think?
People like Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns. My very first, actually, funny enough, my very first art tutor years and years ago used to talk about them, and I think that quite influenced me at the time. But then it wouldn't have influenced me if that hadn't been here.
Yes.
And Jasper Johns made lots of small objects to make people look at his work as well, which I think that's probably where the idea came from for me, making small handheld things. This is the odd one out. This is the first one I did in all of this series. We can't see that one.
That's out of shot. Oh, there we go.
Can you see that one now?
We can see it now.
That's the only one that I did on a zinc plate.
That's amazing.
So I just drew a lot of, and the idea with this, but I haven't had time to try yet, is to maybe put some graffiti on it, and I can't decide whether to handwrite it or whether to write onto a piece of tissue that's got ink on and stick it on as you print it, or what. But I quite like the size of that and the detail.
Yes.
So, but that's all from the same place. Probably can't stick that back up now. But.
Stick that back, yeah. And then on the far wall by the door, you've got the pieces. I love these.
Some people will have seen this before because these were done based on looking at John Constable and his clouds.
Oh,
it's okay.
That one didn't want to stay up there now.
No, last time you saw this one, because when I made them, I made 2 lino prints. They're lino prints, and I only had time to print the one on the left. So earlier this year, I printed the other one, but at the time I was printing the other one, and that's the one that's in the show at Valentine's. I was experimenting with paper and which paper worked best. And the paper that I liked for etching was Arches 88. But for some reason, it made the paper and the blanket so wet, there wasn't even starch in it, that I really annoyed everybody else that was trying to use the press. So I couldn't use it on the etchings, but it actually works really well because it's very smooth for the lino prints. And then the one underneath you saw that last time, because that was also done. That's 2 plates as well. But I just quite like, I don't like John Constable's style, but it's one of the few small abstract paintings he did based over Brighton when there's a storm coming. So it's Storm Over the Sea, and I just enlarged a tiny part of the sky like that and drew lots of charcoal drawings, and then carried on drawing onto that etching plate at the bottom. And then the 2 lino prints, I used the same drawing, and I did the first plate, just changing the size of the width of the tool when it felt right to do that. And then when I did the second one, I had the first one next to me, but I purposely made it slightly different, so they aren't quite the same, but I quite like them.
Yeah, you've been on such a journey with this learning, haven't you?
Well, I think maybe that's why I just have stopped for a couple of months, because you need time to take it all in and think, and look at the work and think, now, is this where I really want to go? Or do I need, like I'm thinking, should I be taking 2 steps back and starting from there again? Or should I just carry on? When I made these big ones, I did purposely make big ones, although I knew I wouldn't print anymore, because you get given these little plates, and I was thinking, I need to work big. I can't stay in a little tiny box anymore. But because years ago, I remember a tutor saying to me, not at Sitting Gills, somewhere else, and I'd made some work about the size of this, and he said to me, and you're thinking, oh well, this is my finished work, and he just went, well, this is your trial, isn't it, for your real big piece? And that made me rethink again all the things that it's funny, the things that people say to you that make you stop and think. Sometimes they're the things you least expect to make you reconsider what you're doing. So when I went back this year, at the beginning of the year, I just had this bee in my bonnet. I have to make big work, because on the course, when you're working next to the painters, their paintings get larger and larger and larger. So you think, gosh, does anybody have a wall that they could hang something that size? They don't have the restrictions of the press, although you can just keep painting, but people don't tend to. And it's difficult if you're in a class of people to do that, because it takes too long. But,
so do you think you're done with education now? Do you think you've reached the end of that journey now, and now you're going to embed and explore yourself? Yes.
I when you've got there, when you suddenly think, I really don't want somebody to tell me what I've got to do next.
Yes.
For a little bit. You just need to be a grown-up and decide yourself which bit comes next.
Yeah, so, and that takes a bit of contemplation, quiet contemplation, and some embedding and just some looking.
Yes. Well, I have been looking. When I very first started working, I used to like to paint flowers, because I grow flowers for my garden. And all the tutors would go, oh, no, painters don't do flowers. So they gradually pushed me away from that. And at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, but whenever you want quick money, what you do, you paint flowers. You know, they'll paint a pot of flowers when they need to pay their studio bill. And I'm thinking, but you're telling me to go. But I've got some roses I had because they all flowered so late in the garden.
Yes.
I love them when all the petals have dropped off and you've just got what's left.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe that might come in some monoprints or something.
You need to give yourself permission, don't you?
Yes.
To play
Yes. Well,
without an end in mind now.
Well, this is what I did do before I started all these, which I think is why the found objects started to appear. Because these were jiggy bags that came last Christmas, and they were quite soft paper, and this one's got barbecue sticks on that remind you of the summer. And these are really just drawings with all those bits. I do a lot of collage just stuck on. And that's what made me start to think as well about using it on the prints, because it just was fun to see how far you could push the idea. Yes. And I'm a very much an ideas person, and I want to try something different. I'm not very good at being told you need to print X number of these. You've done
very well then to go through that education system as you have, because that is a system where they're with purpose, so they're going to be telling you what to do. You've done very well.
I think that's why I've reached the point where I'm done.
I'm done.
Although I think,
and it's and you've recorded it now online. I'm done.
Yes, but you see, this was one of the first prints of,
and that looks like it's got people. It looks like it's got people in it.
No, it isn't. It's these plates. But it's instead of rubbing the ink in all over, I took a piece of cardboard and I just pulled the ink on, and then I let it stay where it was. And I'm not sure whether I like this or I don't like this. I used the colours that were on the walls, but I just kept it.
I find it intriguing.
I didn't like it when I first did it, but now I'm growing towards it because I quite like the gaps of the white paper. I think it's having done the stencils.
You need to put that. You need to put that one on the wall, Vivienne, so you can your brain can contemplate that one.
And then the others I did in the same way that I don't show so much.
That looks like Monet. And
it feels more like an abstract landscape.
That's very Monet.
So, thank you. These were all individual, like monoprints, although they were all printed with the same set of plates. And those I did a whole series of them, and I just didn't necessarily clean them every time, so all the colour, but I put different colours on and it kept going in and out. And so I just think of myself as being experimental, and
that's great, isn't it?
But I don't intentionally do that.
I think it's great to be experimental, and then to understand for a while that you'll do one thing for a while and then see how you feel about it. Making art is such a personal journey.
Yeah, but also
prescribed.
Just need to change. Don't know what it is in us all, that you just want to do something different, don't you? In what you're making.
Keeps it exciting, I think.
Yes. For me and the audience, I hope.
Well, that's just been fascinating, Vivienne, to hear that journey of, how the education has kind of driven you through, and now you've come to reach this point. It'll be very interesting to see in a year's time, looking back, what this last year looks like, based on not being in a formal education and being in your own studio as opposed to being in a shared studio with other people. That would be very interesting.
I think the bit I will miss, and I can see that I might end up joining a studio that I can go to once a week or once a month, is the bouncing off. the other
Yes.
artists, because everybody does it. I don't think painters do it quite so much, but printmaking is quite a social thing generally. And although some of the people I've got to know who print or maybe paint now, but when we all knew one another, we were printmakers in other schools, I still see their work online. So it's nice to see the directions that they're all going in, and they see what I'm doing, and you just think, oh, well, it'll stay, it'll move. But
It will.
but
As you said,
my grandson might have an influence. I don't know.
who knows? That's I was just intrigued because your family is obviously such a heavy influence, like you were saying about the fishing and the water, and I was like, oh, it seems you're very influenced by that emotion around your family. It'll be very interesting to see.
Yes, I'm very emotional. That does I think that's why I tend to fly off into what other people might go, what are you doing now? You know, like the tutor goes, where's all the colour? Why do we need all the colour? Why can't it all be black and white? And the colour, I am influenced in what colour I use, or whether it's black and white, by how I feel that day. And then he said to me, but it doesn't look okay because I can tell it's the colour out of the tube and you haven't mixed it. So it's more interesting if you mix it. So I don't absolutely know. But this one up here probably looks a royal bluish to you, but it actually...
we can't see what you're pointing at.
Okay, here we go.
Oh no, there's another one coming off the wall.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a beautiful colour.
But that probably looks sort of royal blue.
Yeah, it does.
But it isn't. It's turquoise. It's the only colour that I've discovered that when you put your phone up to it to take a photo, it's not a true colour.
Doesn't come out true.
No, the ink.
What I would say to you, Vivienne, is these are all just opinions.
Yes.
And they're only opinions, and now you have the final decision of what you do. Yeah. You're back in your own studio, in your own space, and you can make a decision whether that's right for you or not. And that's big, and that's what going on that journey does. It gives you the tools to now make those decisions yourself, how you want to do it. So as I say, it's going to be really fascinating to watch how you develop over the next
not disappointing.
It won't be disappointing because you're so curious. You're so curious, and you're not taking the easy options either. You're obviously butting up against opinions of your tutors, and that's really exciting because you're not going to produce something expected.
No,
we don't want expected, do we?
No,
we want something exciting and different, and see what else you can produce. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Very generous sharing, and really, really interesting as well. I'm just intrigued now. I'm intrigued to see how this is going to
comes after Christmas.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, what am I going to be seeing from Vivienne in the next?
Because most of this is different from what you saw last time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we'll need to catch up in the new year and see where you are and see what you're doing, and see how it's evolving, and see which artists might be influencing you then. They might be a whole different set of artists influencing.
Well, I have come across a couple while I've been looking online, because I didn't feel ready to actually make new work, but I've been looking and thinking, I quite like that idea. Not necessarily printmakers, just looking at other work, because I've always been attracted to work from cubism forwards. Yes. I've never really, although I've done things with Turner and Constable recently, that's quite unusual for me to go that far back. I think it's just because I was looking at water that they came into the equation. So yes, it'll be interesting to see. One thing I would like to try is to make them three-dimensional by folding them.
I've seen so much amazing. I don't know whether you saw the Carol Berry interview, and she does a lot of paper, and the dogs come to join us now. Look. But I've seen so much amazing, like Japanese paper folding and origami and such like. It's so intriguing. I am fascinated by that. Because you're working with paper, and the Japanese are very fascinated by paper. So that maybe another avenue for you to look down. Who knows?
Oh, I don't know. That might just get too complicated, but that's probably enough idea. But it is something that's going through my mind.
Yeah.
So I probably will try it, and then you can see whether it works or not.
And you can let me see how it goes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the great thing, isn't it, about having your studio? I know we are chatting. That's the great thing about having the freedom of a studio, isn't it? You can just play.
And you can just stick it on the wall and think, in 2 weeks' time, do I like that? Or yes, no, maybe. Like when some of these prints, when I first printed them, I didn't like them. I thought, this is a failure, this is a no-no. But now, 6 months later, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should revisit that.
Well, let's wait and see. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's very generous sharing, and being very honest as well. I love it when artists are very honest and open about their journey, because it's so helpful for everyone else who's listening to know that all of that is completely normal, that you don't like it first of all, and then you put it on the wall and you live with it for a bit. That's all kind of normal part of the process. And I think the more we talk openly about it, the easier it is for other artists to appreciate, and it helps us all with our mental health, doesn't it? Knowing that this is normal, completely normal. Thank you, Vivienne, very much.
Bye.